always used sailboats as inspiration in my sculptures. I love not only the shape of the hull, but the beauty of the sails when they're full of wind. Having taken up sailing in recent years, and not owning a sailboat, it seems fitting that that would be the next project that I undertake. That begs the question though, what sailboat? My name is Bob Emser. I'm a sculptor and a boat builder. My sculptures have always been inspired by nautical and aeronautical imagery. In fact, sometimes people passing by my studio would ask if I'm building a boat. I've always enjoyed the artistry of wooden boats. It seems like I've been building boats for over 40 years, and now I'm building sculptures that float. Welcome to the art of boat building. Wow, what a contrast. I would certainly rather be sailing today, but the next best thing to sailing, I suppose, is to build a sailboat. So welcome to the second season of The Art of Boat Building, episode 1. We're going to start an introduction on building a sailboat. This will probably take 18 months to 2 years to complete, so it'll be a nice long build. If you haven't already, I would invite you to subscribe. This would be a great opportunity as you're getting in on the beginning of this boat build. So over a year ago, I began researching and thinking about what type of sailboat that I wanted to build. Did lots of looking through books and internet searches, and one of the first sailboats that I was taken by is this image of a Gil Smith catboat. I really like the sweeping lines of the hull, and in particular the raised transom. In these images of this three-dimensional model, it's easy to see how beautiful the lines of the hull, the cockpit, and the sweeping long aft deck and the transom are. Gilbert Monroe Smith was born in 1843 in Manorville, New York. As a boy, he carved sailboat models but never had any training in boat design. He began working in various boatyards around the Patron River while producing 12 to 16-foot catboats in his spare time for the local baymen. In 1876, Smith rented a shop on the Patchogue River to produce his catboats, which quickly gained notoriety among the South Shore baymen. They were thought to be the fastest in the bay. Smith's work steadily increased, and in 1881, Smith moved his business to a larger boatyard where he crafted his catboats until he suffered a stroke in 1936. Smith died in 1940 at the age of 97. All of Smith's boats were originally built by eye from half model, so there are no original plans that exist. I did learn that the Long Island Maritime Museum has an extensive collection of Gil Smith catboats. A few years back, they took some lines off of some of the built boats, and these are some of the line drawings that they had taken off of those boats. They don't, however, make these drawings available to the general public. I had read that these are deceptively simple boats and would take a very competent builder to reproduce one properly. And in fact, in 2004, a 21-foot Gil Smith catboat was built in Finland. And when it was sailed, it took 3 big guys to handle her in a fairly light wind. So although beautiful, I don't think that the Gil Smith designed catboats are the one for me. one, it's really impossible to get the drawings, and two, being really a beginning sailor, it's probably not the boat for me. So, but it really made me interested in cat boats, and so I started doing a little bit more research about cat boats and other designs. A cat boat is a sailboat that has a single sail and a single mast. And the mast is always set well forward into the bow of the boat. Most cat boats have a very shallow draft, if this is the water line. And they have centerboards, although some cat boats do have a full keel on it. And they are most generally gaff rigged, as I have drawn here with a gaff rig. So I then began looking into cat boats, and I did quite a bit of research and found quite a few of them. This is a book, The Making of the Tomcat. I found another book on building an instant cat boat. And those all kind of led me to the Beetle cat. And the Beetle cat is probably one of the most famous cat boats. It's a really nice small Daysailer, and was developed in 1920 by John Beetle. John drew the lines for this pleasure boat while working for his father, James Beetle, who was a supplier and builder of whaling boats. The Beetle cat is 12 foot 4 inches long, and this gaff-rigged design was based on larger 20 to 30 foot cat boats that were used for shallow water fishing along Cape Cod. With a large demand and interest in the Beetle cat and the demise of the whaling industry, the family shifted its production to the Beetle cat boat. During World War II, the production of the Beetle cat was suspended. But after the war, the Beetle cat family sold the rights to the Beetle cat to the Concordia Company. The Concordia Company then turned to Leo Telsmanac, who was a master boat builder, and he was put in charge of the boat, and it was in 1946 that he created the Beetle cat mold, which is still being used today. The current owner is Bill Womack, who moved the operation to its current location in Wareham, Massachusetts in 2004. Beetles are built with planks of Atlantic white cedar over white oak frames. The seams are caulked with cotton. This is known as carvel planking. I've read that a Beetle cat can be sailed by a 10-year-old as well as a large man. Its super wide beam, almost half its length at 6 foot, makes it very stable, gives it a good carrying capacity. Up to 6 people can sit on the bottom boards while the boat's being sailed. So I became even more intrigued with the Beetle cat and thought that perhaps that would be the boat that I'd want to build. As I did a little research, you cannot buy plans for an actual Beetle cat, but I was fortunate enough to come across this book by Paul Gartside called Plans and Dreams. And in it, there is some plans for a cat boat that is very, very close to a Beetle cat. And he pulled a lot of the dimensions and so forth off of a Beetle cat. And this is a picture of his friend Tom White with his Beetle cat. There's a nice little essay in here about how and why and all of his decision process. And then you can see that it has all of the plans, at least study plans, for the cat boat.
that you would need. All of the offsets and everything are in here. This is a really interesting book. There are a number of boats and little essays about about his decision process in designing them. So I'll put a link in the bio to this book. If you're interested in just reading about boat designs and ideas, from what I've learned, Paul Gartside is really one of the premier boat designers right now. So these Beetle cats that are really pretty easy day sailors are often compared to the Herreshoff 12.5. Both of these vessels share that old style boat handling aesthetics that are qualities that I really like in a wooden boat. So that led me to explore more about the Herreshoff 12.5.
Born in Bristol, Rhode Island, Nathaniel Herreshoff graduated from MIT. In 1878, Herreshoff returned to Bristol, where he and his older brother John formed the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company. Herreshoff provided the engineering expertise, while his older brother John provided the business expertise. Known as the Wizard of Bristol, he was a foremost yacht designer of his day. Captain Nat designed and built 5 America Cup Defenders. As an accomplished sailor, he was the helmsman of the Vigilant. There is an excellent film about the Herreshoffs and their accomplishments titled Of Boats and Brothers, the Yacht Building Herreshoffs. It's currently available on Amazon Prime and is about an hour long, and I highly recommend it.
Well, as the story goes, that in 1914, Robert Edmonds II, he was a noted amateur sailor of the day, and he was the managing director of the Herreshoff design America Cup Defender Resolute. Edmonds commissioned Herreshoff to design and construct the H-12.5. So Edmonds and his friends wanted a smaller boat, one that would be easier for their sons to handle in the choppy waters off of Massachusetts' Buzzards Bay. So Captain Nat then set out to design what was then called the Buzzards Bay Boys Boat. Say that 3 times real fast. It was designed in 1914. So the Herreshoff 12.5 has more than stood the test of time, and it's been referred to as the best small boat design ever.
Of the more than 500 designs by Captain Nat Herreshoff, arguably one of the greatest yacht designers of all time, there is only one boat that bears his name, the Herreshoff 12.5, a day sailor with an open cockpit and an easy-to-handle sail plan.
I really became excited about this boat, but again, the Herreshoff 12.5 is not a boat that you can get plans for. However, there are 2 boats that are based off of the Herreshoff 12.5, and that is the Somme Sound 12.5 and the Haven 12.5. Now, the Somme Sound is a lapstake construction, and I'm not as interested in that the last boat that I built was a lapstake construction. Now, the Haven is Carvel planked, and that is something that I am interested in doing and learning more about. So I had an interesting opportunity last summer. I was planning on going out to the wooden boat school to take a class on cold molding, and it was filled, so I had an alternative class picked out, and that was the Elements of Sailing class. Once I got there, I learned that we would be sailing 3 boats, the Herreshoff 12.5, the Haven 12.5, and a Beetle cat. So it was really a great opportunity for me to not only to be able to put my eyes and hands on these boats, but also to get to sail them. So I learned quite a bit about all 3, and Really enjoyed the time out in Brooklyn, Maine at the Wooden Boat School.
The Wooden Boat School is in Brooklyn, Maine. The school is on the shores of the world-class sailing waters known as Egamon Reach. Nearly 800 students take classes each summer. They offer 1- and 2-week courses in wooden boats on how to design them, how to build them, how to maintain them, and how to restore them, and how to sail them. During the 5-day sailing class, we would meet in the boathouse for a morning classroom session on techniques of sailing, during which our instructors Tracy and Martin shared their amazing knowledge and stories about sailing. We would then go sailing for about 3 hours in the morning, and after lunch break, another 3 hours in the afternoon. We each took a turn at the helm and got to choose which sailboat we preferred. Having sailed all 3 boats, I found myself gravitating towards the Haven. Though a small town of only 800 residents, Brooklyn boasts having over 6 wooden boat builders, which gives it the title, the boat building capital of the world. The largest being the Brooklyn Boat Yard, which was started in 1960 by Joel White, the designer of the Haven. The yard is presently operated by Joel's son, Steve White. Located on the Egamon Reach, it has over 60 highly skilled boat builders working there. Given my newfound love for the Haven, it seems only fitting to me that the Brooklyn Boat Yard was its birthplace. It is Joel White's words that best describe the Herreshoff-inspired Haven. Joel wrote, "While the plans for the Haven
12.5-footer say designed by Joel White, and it is true that I did draw the plans, the concept and detailing of this design were developed by Nathaniel Herreshoff back in 1914. His design, generally known as the Herreshoff 12.5-footer or Buzzards Bay 12.5-footer, produced the most popular of all Herreshoff built boats, around 400 having been built by the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company. All that I have done is take the original 12.5-footer and slightly modify the lines to reduce the draft by a foot, and to provide a centerboard to offset the loss of lateral plane. Toward that end, the displacement and stability of the 2 boats are identical. The fore and aft center of buoyancy is the same, and the same sail plans are used. The outboard profile above the water is also identical. Every possible attempt was made to reproduce the character of the body plan. I had hoped that the new boat would closely resemble the old 12.5s, and to this extent, I think we succeeded. If you see the boat in the mooring, or out sailing from a vantage point that obscures the centerboard trunk, I don't think you can tell the new class from the old. So let the credit for the excellence of these boats go where it is due, to the Wizard of Bristol, N.G. Herreshoff. Joel White, N.A.
So you may have already guessed which boat I'm going to build, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Would you have built the Gartside catboat, or would you build the Joel White Haven? Leave me a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. Well, I was out at the Wooden Boat School and had the opportunity to sail both of these boats. I decided I did not like the Beetle cat, mainly because you had to sit on the floorboards while sailing the boat. So with that, I decided that I was going to build the Haven. And while I was out there, I picked up a set of plans. So let's open them up and take a look at them. Straightforward. These are the 8 sheets that came with the plans. So let's go through and we'll talk about what each one of them is. So the first 2 sheets are the sail plan. And this plan shows a a Marconi rig, which is more of a traditional triangular shaped sail. I am not going to do a Marconi rig on the boat that I'm going to build. I'm going to do a gaff rig, which is where there's 4 sides to the sail. Gaff rigs are usually not quite as tall. They're a little bit more flexible. And the third sheet is the line plan, and this shows all of the contours of how the boat would go together, where the frame stations are. And it also has all of the rabbet and bottom keel widths at these frame stations. So for example, this is frame number 2, and frame number 2 would be here. So this would be looking at the bottom of the boat, and this is frame 2, and this would be looking at the side of the boat. This information you could loft right off of that to build the boat. Fortunately, these plans come with some patterns, so there's no lofting needed. Sheet 5 is the construction plan, and this shows all of the little details that are needed in how the boat is constructed, how the floor timbers fit, and how the frames fit into the floor timber, where the seats go, and also it will show you how some of the planking detail along there. So all of the sort of small details that we need, we pull off of this plan. Sheet 4 is the wood and the ballast keel and a transom jig. So this top part here is the transom jig. So it sets at what the angle the transom will be in relationship to the boat. And this is a construction on how to build that frame. The next thing here is the wooden keel layout. And the wooden keel is what goes across the backbone of the boat. This is where the center trunk will go. And so it shows all of these different widths at these different stations to lay that out. And the final part down here is the mold for the ballast keel. And the mold, it'll be a lead keel, and so this shows a construction on how to build that wooden mold to pour the lead into. Sheet 6 shows the spars, hardware, and the bulkhead. So these are the spars. So this is the main mast, and it shows that it actually tapers at each end. So that gives you all the dimensions you need to make that the mast. And then this would be the gaff spar. This is the main boom, and this would be the jib. The center section here are for all of the bronze fittings and what you need to do to make all of those bronze fittings. That's one of the things that we will be doing, is we're going to be casting our own bronze. That will bring back some of my old bronze casting from my sculpture days. And so I'm really excited about, we'll build a little small foundry, and we'll do probably mostly sand casting of these fittings. And then the bottom here shows the bulkhead. This would be looking, if the boat were cut in half and you're looking aft, this is what the back would look like. This is the traveler rod for the main sheet to slide across. And then this would be looking forward in the boat of that bulkhead. So the main mast would come down here, and then these would be cleats that would be holding all of the rigging for the sails. Also shows this is where the seat locations would be, and this would be the floorboard. Sheet 7 is really more of a pattern than it is a plan. These are actual full-size patterns to use that we can make tracings off of. So there's several things on here. One would be the stem, which is this curved piece here, and all of the different pieces that it's made up of. This would be the stern knee here. And then there is an outline here of the center trunk, which goes up and down and across. And finally, there's the transom, which is here, and it shows half of it. So what we'll do is we'll lay out half of it, and then we would fold it over and make a mirror half on the other side. And the other thing is the tiller, which is right here. And it shows two views, one this way and one on the top. The final sheet 8 is the patterns for all of the mold for each station. So it goes from 1 up through 22. And like I had said before, there's no lofting needed for this boat, and this will help in that all of the frames can be directly traced off of this onto the wood molds. So those are the plans for the Haven. I have built a model of the boat, mainly because it's the way I like to work. When I was out on the East Coast at the boat school last summer, I swung on down through Rhode Island and went to the Herreshoff Museum in Bristol, Rhode Island.
I'm here at the Herreshoff Museum in the model room, and as you can see, there's hundreds of half-hull models that Captain Nat had carved. I was really interested in his process of boat designing, and that I had read that he would carve a model first, and then that model would be sent into the shop, and he had developed this small sort of a measuring instrument to measure all of the takeoffs and so forth off of the half hull, and then enlarge them so that the men in the shop could then start laying out the boat and build it. This process is really interesting to me in that it's very much the way that Gil Smith also did models, and also the way that I work.
So the way I work as a sculptor is so much like the way that I've learned about some of these great boat builders. This is a model, or in artistic world we call it a maquette, which is a three-dimensional sketch of a piece of artwork. And I would start by building this scale of a piece first, and then it would be, from this I would take off measurements and do a drawing. And then the drawing would be enlarged and made into the actual sculpture. This project was ultimately a project that was done for Australia, and this is a photograph of it and on the beach of Perth. So in building this Haven model, I actually started with a model of a Herreshoff 12.5. It's made by a company called Blue Jacket. And what I did was I cut off the solid keel that is on the Herreshoff, added the center board, and also added a center board trunk on the inside. It was pretty much fun building this model. It also gave me some insights into how the boat's going to go together. I also think it'll be a great resource so that I can show things that in advance before we actually build them, about how they're going to go together. So for obvious reasons, I think building a model before you actually build the actual boat is really an important step. I know there's probably a difference of opinion on that. Some people build boats without building a model. I personally think it's an important aspect, obviously, by the way that I work as a sculptor. But I'd love to hear from you if you have an opinion on it. leave me a comment below. I'd like to know what you think about that. So the first order of business to start building the boat was that where we will build the transom and we'll build the stem, which runs down here. Both of these patterns are laid out on this sheet here. Where here's the transom and the stem, and we will get started on that, and I think we're going to have a good time. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.